He threw a leg across that iron horse and pulled the throttle down. A million things rushing through his mind like that rumbling sound. Living life in his own eyes, direction isn't clear. So searching all these years.
Welcome to Answers from Mars Hill. This is Pastor Ski of the Rushing Wind Biker Church in Holbrook, New York. I want to welcome you to tonight, to this evening's show. It's been a crazy week. We're coming off our election. I think, we don't know yet. We've had someone who has been declared a winner, but there's a lot of stuff going on, so we'll see what happens there. And I think I just heard that that looks like there's a vaccine, that Pfizer has come out with a vaccine, and it's 95% effective. So looks like things are happening, and kind of ironic how things happen right after the election, and just something to think about. So we're coming to the end of the fall almost. We're coming into the holiday season. Thanksgiving is right around the corner, and hopefully things are going to open up soon, and churches can get back to doing what they do, and we have our church and we're rolling along, but we still have guidelines and things that we have to abide with, and that's all well and good. We want to keep the people safe, but life is crazy. And I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to the end of 2020. It's been an interesting year. Coming into every year, I have I ask God for what's going to be the defining thought of the year. And it's funny because we're in the year 2020, and really. What God spoke to me at the beginning of the year is this is going to be a year of clarity, of a vision. And it's amazing when you look at this year and see how many things have come to light, how many things in our country and the world have been exposed. And I think we have a clearer idea of what's going on in our country and the world. I think even in the church, as a Christian, as we look at how these things are affecting Christianity in the church, I think we're getting a clarity of just where the church is as far as who's real. Do we really have people that follow what we say we follow? And so it's it's not over yet. Still wondering what's going to happen with this election when all is said and done, the lawsuits, and it just seems when you think everything is going to end on election day. We kind of had an idea it wasn't really going to end by election day, but it just seems every day now there's still something new that's popping up, and so there's a lot of anxiety out there, and hopefully we can look at things even through this show and get an idea of understanding and maybe have some peace and understand what's going on, and. Last week we finished I think a 2-part series about life being a journey, and it's got a destination and how we all are moving in a direction to come to a certain point, and we have a purpose and a call in our life, and it kind of all leads to an understanding that hopefully there is a God, that we have a purpose, that we're actually on a journey and not wandering through an existence to come here, live, and then just die, and it is what it is, and we vanish with the dust of our bones, and that's it. And so, if you get a chance, maybe go check out last week's program on just the Christian perspective of life and how it really gives us a little more chance of having understanding of a purpose and a reason for why we're here. But today I'm going to do something a little different. We had this election coming up, and I purposely have kind of veered away from, I didn't want to get political and start to beat my drum on my preferences, and because it's hard to have a conversation, especially before an election. And so, kind of to guard myself so I don't get myself in trouble. I wasn't promoting anything, and now we're after the election. And so, I want to talk about a few things today that I think people need to maybe see a little clearer. We live in a country that we have freedoms, and we're allowed to vote. And we just came off an election. We got to exercise our God-given right. I don't feel embarrassed to use that term because I believe it is a God-given right, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. And I want to really talk about how this whole idea of democracy and this whole idea of voting, that the individual of a nation, of a community, of a family, actually has input into the direction that the culture goes, and also have rights within our own life. And what I want to discuss today is that that wasn't in existence until Jesus came. As much as you want to take God out of the equation, and maybe you don't want to take a serious look at Jesus and Christianity, all you have to do is look at world history. And there was no democracy, there was no free society until Jesus came and spoke about the individual being important, individual rights, freedom, that Jesus came that we would be able to enjoy freedom as a society, freedom as individuals, and freedom from oppression, freedom from mandated religion, spiritual things that we believe that we're freed from bondage and things that are addictive and things that are detrimental to our life. But I want to concentrate today on hopefully showing an understanding of where this American democracy came from, the culture, what it means to have unalienable rights, what does it mean to be created equal and all have an equal chance, and how that came from really the scriptures of the Bible and the teachings of Jesus Christ. Didn't exist before that. You had kings, you had socialist systems, you had oppressive governments of hierarchy and class and caste systems like some of the world still has. And today I want to look at our culture, our government, and also look at a little bit at this last election, and maybe get an understanding that that we've been fed a lie on a lot of different levels of spewing words of freedom and democracy and rights and equality, when in actuality the way those principles are being portrayed and pushed on us is anything but. And a little bit of the history of that in our country. And so I'm excited about this show because I'm going to get to vent a little bit, get to share a little bit. The political climate is not going to end. And so no pressure on me trying to sway somebody's vote because the voting is done. But I want to share a little bit of God's perspective and why we were created with unalienable rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, are actually from the Bible. That's where it started. That's where it came from. And so after this first break, I want to dive into this conversation, maybe some explanation, understanding, and hopefully we've got some people that wrote in, and maybe Bobby's got some things we can throw around. So we'll be back after a few words from our sponsors.
Hey everybody, this is Motorcycle Mike, the personal injury lawyer. I've been riding motorcycles my entire adult life. During the course of my 30-year career as a lawyer, I've also represented countless injured motorcyclists. If you're one of them, I can be of assistance to you. Go to my website, please, motorcyclemikeesq.com. I'll always be there for you. I'm on your side when you ride.
Welcome back to Answers from Mars Hill, Pastor Ski again. And today we're having a conversation about our country, our philosophy as a nation, and how freedom, voting, individual choice actually came into our culture, the human culture, through the teachings of Jesus Christ. And, we have always considered ourselves, even to the upsetting of some, a Christian nation. And, people kind of get twisted when you talk about that, but it's not so much that we have a national religion. I don't believe that we should be oppressed in the religion that we follow. Obviously, I kind of lean towards one more than the others, but the whole idea of being a Christian nation is freedom to choose. God gave us freedoms when He created us, and it wasn't freedom from a religion; it's freedom to practice our religion. And Jesus actually said in Luke chapter 4, one of the Gospels, He said, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He's anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, and to set free those who are oppressed." And, He came in a culture and a time in history, and it was before that, really, in all of the world, where there were the haves and the have-nots, the hierarchy, and the peasants, and the ones who worked for everyone else, and the ones that we didn't have a say in their life. And I want to, before I bring Bobby in to kind of expand this conversation, we have a Constitution, and we have a Bill of Rights, and so our Constitution was framed by men who wanted to create a society that would be free from oppression, and much of that came from the philosophies of the Bible and from Jesus. And within our Constitution, I just want to read one section that you're all familiar with. And then I want to make a point by quoting someone else who you're probably also very familiar with. And so in our Constitution, it says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among them, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." And that's talking about every individual within a free society that we call the United States. Now, we're just coming off an election and very polarized, and you have people saying they are for rights and they are for equality, and they are for this and they're for that. And I want to make a quote from our president-elect, Joe Biden. And he said this in March of this year. And quoting kind of the Constitution, he said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women were created by, you know the thing." That's the quote of the man that is our president-elect. All right? Now, you would think that someone, even in our government, someone who has been given the responsibility or aspires to be given the responsibility would know the very words of the document by which our society is based on. It's like when you become part of an organization, they have an oath and they have They have a constitution, and they have something that is the philosophy of that group. And one of the first things you do is you memorize that, because that's what everything's based on. And so what I want to propose to you today is, I don't think it's by accident. Do I think this guy's got maybe some memory lapses in it? I think probably. It sounds like it. But I think when you really look at this and what he's excluded, I don't think it's by accident. I think it's by design. And what seems to be missing and what seems to be forgotten is really a microcosm of what has been forgotten in our society. They don't want the powers that be. The people who want power, they don't want you to know exactly what our Constitution says. That we have been endowed with unalienable rights by a creator who is sovereign and wants every one of us to have life and liberty and be able to pursue happiness. See, the pursuit of happiness is where the vote comes in. It's where each one of us has a say, and each one of us gets to pull a lever or fill a circle in. I've had both in my time. This election, it was a sheet of paper, and we had to fill in the little circles like we used to do when we took our SAT tests when we were in high school. But I don't think it's a coincidence that probably the most important parts of what our country's founded on are conveniently left out of speeches and quotes. And so I think Bobby's got some things he wants to talk about, and maybe some things that have come in. So how you doing, Bobby?
I'm doing good. So I wanted to just kind of just get your thoughts on and kind of educate everybody a little bit about how democracy came about in the world. And basically our whole government, our whole constitution is really based on a lot of the ancient democracies like Greece that even our buildings in Washington D.C. are Greek design. And could you explain a little bit of how after Jesus, how especially in Greece, how democracy developed from the teachings of Jesus, and how all these individual rights came about? But a lot of people don't know that Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi, these men were praised so much, and their teachings were pretty much based on the Beatitudes and the gospel of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. Could you explain how it started and our first democracy in the world developed from the teachings of Jesus?
I know you're going to ask me for the first democracy.
Well, democracy in general.
Yeah.
Because I mean, did it start originally, like, was Greece the first, somewhat democracy? Did it start there?
Well, the democracy was an expansion of really Christianity in the church. And, when Jesus came, and obviously he started the church, and then you had government, and that's where the conflict was, is because all of a sudden Jesus brought this new philosophy that every person has value, every person has worth, that we're all equal, that, in things in the Bible it says there's no Jew, there's no Gentile, and those that have money are no important than those that didn't have money. And even how the church was formed, it was a society where everybody took care of everyone else, and kind of similar to socialism, except nobody was mandated that they had to give. It was just the heart of people who now cared about everyone. And so what Jesus came was to empower the people that didn't have power. And we see even in our society today that we have peaceful protests. I almost laugh when I hear that now, because who knows what that means anymore with the political things that have been going on. But the fact that we have a say, that developed over time into a system where how do we get everybody involved, and you came up with a system of where everybody could just have a choice of options of what to do. We saw after the toppling of Iraq, and just how incredibly special it was to a culture who had been oppressed and just had kings, and they had rulers, and they had despots that had all the power, had all the thing, and then when Saddam Hussein was toppled, and you got to see these commoners, and I remember they had purple dye on their fingers that whenever they went to vote, and they wanted to make sure that they wanted to know who voted and who didn't vote. And I don't know if you remember the pictures of these people that they had, I think it was purple dye on their finger, and it was such a proud moment that they actually had the ability to have a voice in their own government. And that only came through Christianity, and it doesn't mean that it's got to be a Christian religious-based society, but the philosophies, and I don't want to separate that from my faith because it's an important thing to understand that came from who I believe the Son of God is, but even to bring that to a culture that doesn't dive into the Christian faith, creating systems of each person being able to have a say. And so over time that developed into a systematic growth of a government where how do we get everyone involved, and then you have people who are citizens of a nation or of a community that now had the ability, and now you had who was the bigger part of the culture, and so you had the minority and you had the majority, and so you had the ebb and flow of cultures based on what the individuals would want in their culture. And then little by little it grew. And, when governments grow and it grows in organization, that's when, corruption and stuff comes in. And, when you take God out of it, you get the human nature and you get everything where we are now. But over time, it was the philosophies of Jesus that came to give the individuals a say in their own life. And our democracy and the inner workings and the mechanisms were really nothing more than sitting down and creating an organized system. Well, how do we let everyone have a say? And how do we make sure that, you have requirements, responsibilities, like in a church. You want responsible people to be your pastors and your leaders. So they had people who were nominated. It was the people who a lot of people thought would be good at that. And then you had a couple of them, and it came to, well, let's choose which one. And they had a voting system, and then little by little government grew. And then, unfortunately, government grew just like the church and became an organized, organism that got out of hand, just like the church has at times, become a big organism that now it gets corrupted what the individual can do. But that's how it all started. And through the church and through that individual mandate, and through just how every person was important, came the system of healthcare, and the system of judicial systems and court systems, and humanitarian efforts that all came because you have certain areas of the world where humanitarianism doesn't matter. Places like China, places like India, that they still have the untouchables and they still have the lower class. So, so far from Christianity. Even though Gandhi was a very, I believe, God-inspired man, but we see the influence of Jesus that brought all these new, better systems of humanity into being. And so I think we're about ready for our first break. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, I just want to expand on this a little bit because I have some thoughts I want to share in the next segment. So we'll be back in a minute or two. This is Pastor Ski, and I want to tell you about two books that I've written, The Fear of Life and No Sting. The Fear of Life is my journey of faith and how I lived in fear for close to 35 years and how God took me out of it. No Sting is about my battle with cancer and my victory through God over it. And if you're interested in any of these books, go to barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, and also zulonpress.com. Go to the bookstore. And again, I want to thank you for your support. Welcome back to Answers from Mars Hill. Pastor Ski again. Talking about freedom, the right to vote, our Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I want to get political for a few moments and talk about some things that were just brought out in our country and things that occurred. And we have this Constitution that talks about individual rights and talks about the value of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I just want to bring up two things real quick. And I'm going to get political, and I'm going to get maybe myself in trouble. But we have a couple of things that have been going on and some things in our country. And, we talk about right to life versus the right to choose. And, it's no secret where I would stand on that, considering that I'm a Christian. I believe in the Bible, and I'm a pastor, so I have my beliefs on that. But what I want to talk about for a moment is, in this political climate, you have one side that is promoting equality and also promoting the pro-choice, pro-abortion agenda. And I just want to give some clarity here so people understand, because, Jesus created us all, God created us all as equals, black, white, Hispanic, young, old, and everything in between. And we all are supposed to have equal rights and equal value. And this whole idea of, lives matter, black lives matter, blue lives matter, and all this other thing. It's much bigger than that. All lives have to be equal. And I want to touch for 1 second on this thing about the right to life. Right? When you pay attention really to the numbers and what has been happening, all right, the whole Planned Parenthood organization was started by Margaret Sanger, who was a racist, trying to purge society and culture of an element that they didn't want to grow. And statistically, we look at since abortion's been legal, as a recent figure, 40 million abortions, of which upwards of almost 50% of those abortions have been African American, and so you look at a population that's only about 12-13%, and what I want to propose to you, because I believe that we all should be equal, and African Americans should be equal in their rights, and their cultures should be on par, and we should all be on an even plane. And what I'm going to propose to you is, what would the voting bloc of African American and even Hispanic people be had abortion not gone in the direction it went? Understand there's been an agenda. And so this side that is saying they want to create equality, they're afraid of a voting bloc growing past a certain point. And I just want to make that clear. You can't talk off two sides of your face. I believe all life is valuable and important. And so if I was to be a decision maker, and I would ban, let's say ban abortion, if I was the decision maker, that would much more benefit the African and the African American and the Hispanic community than it would the white and Caucasian community. And that's a fact, and so I just want us to understand oppression has a lot of different subversive looks, and we need to understand that vote is important, and so having the majority is also important, and certain things are done and certain things are perpetrated and promoted to keep the balance of the percentages too, and saying you're giving people equal rights. I think some circles in our country are afraid that one block is going to become too big in number, but they want their vote. And I just want to share that because as a an equality person, and I'm absolutely an equality person. We need to understand all the dynamics of what's going on in the decision making. And another thing, as far as right to life, that I want to talk about for a second, young lives matter, preborn lives matter. This is what I believe. I also believe elderly lives matter. And we've had situations, particularly here in our state, where if every life mattered, why was one particular segment of community allowed to face a much higher risk when this pandemic came in to our lives than other segments? Why was it okay to park people with senior citizens and with people in nursing homes? Understand there's an agenda. People who have health issues, people that are older, are an expense to a culture, an expense to a society. Don't think these things aren't thought out. Don't think about it at all. You know, I just heard that our governor here is livid, and he's going to try to hold back this vaccine. It doesn't play well into the economics of what he wants to do. You know, we give a vaccine, and all of a sudden, a lot of this stuff gets solved, and a lot of aid doesn't come in. So what is the value of life? Do we really care about the value of life? Understand that this has become such a political hot thing, that what's really important about life, what's really important about freedom, and what's really important about our right to vote has been mangled. There's no clarity anymore. We were endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights. That means you can't take them away. The right to life, whether we're young, I believe, preborn, or whether we're 80s and 90s and maybe need some medical care and maybe need assistance. Those lives have to be very much as valuable as any other life, even though there's an expense at times, a lot of times, to help that person. And so I just want to share those few things, because if we really believe what our nation was founded on, we need to hold these things tight and make sure everybody has those rights. So, Bobby, I want to bring you back in. I think you got some things you want to share. I don't know if I threw you off what you wanted, but I just want to share those things because there's a time you got to get political.
Yeah, and it's like, it's weird because it's like you listen to these things, and having a governor basically let all these elderly people die not wanting a vaccine, all these things that we talk about, like they seem like conspiracy theories, and you're like, oh my God, how could that be? How could anybody do that? Why, that nobody would do that? But it's really happening, and it's hard to really think and say, how could somebody do this? How could somebody put these priorities over life and over health for people? But it really is happening, and it sounds far-fetched.
Well, that's why I wanted to wait till after the election.
Yeah,
because the votes are in. I want people to understand what they did. I want people to understand what their votes actually did, and not get caught up in the rhetoric. And so, we all have grandmothers. We all have, we might have friends who have children that are disabled, and they're going to be the next to go, because if they're not going to value the elderly, they're not going to value the people who are young and might be more of a financial responsibility on our culture, and that's what our governor is leaning in on. And so, they're looking to cleanse society of the burdens of people whose their lives they deem not as valuable, whether it's the unborn, whether it's the disabled, or whether it's the elderly. And they have the right to pursue their happiness, every single one of them. And however that looks, we should come alongside them, and have the freedom. They should have the freedom to be able to make a decision, but also the freedom to choose what kind of life, to have life, whether they're old or whether they're not. And I think people need to see what they just did with their vote.
Yeah, and it's almost like you're putting in the hands, the instead of, like, a human being is determining who should live, who should die, who should get, help with their health, who shouldn't. I mean, that's totally not, I'm saying, the way it's supposed to be. I mean,
the irony here, we have a country where we are free to vote for whatever we want to vote for. And half the country, if all the numbers are what they are, actually voted for a system and a philosophy that will take their right to vote away. It's the irony of this. And they don't understand that the system and the philosophies they've actually voted to endorse and bring in will get rid of their right to vote and the right for them individually to have a say in their own life and their own government. It's the irony. And they've been blinded to it. And that's why I didn't want to do this before the election, because I didn't want to be on the soapbox and try to, but people need to know what they just did.
Yeah.
If this goes the direction that it could possibly go.
And it's always some type of major event, whether it be a terrorism act or whether it be a pandemic. There's always something that happens that the government steps in and said, okay, we need to fix this so that this never happens again. But in order to do that, we have to take away this right, and this right. And it's almost like you say to yourself, oh my God, are these events planned? People say, oh, the pandemic. And I'm like, initially, I'm like, oh, no, how could that be? But then you look and you have China behind the origin of this. China, a communist country, a country that's trying to dominate and take over the world, that hates the United States. It's like we in America this is the last. We're the last hope.
And this freedom, freedom. With freedom comes responsibility. Know what you're doing. Know what you're doing. And we've people are voting for something that sounds really good, and they've been told of other countries that tried to do this, and it's totally dismantled the country, and there's more oppression and everything else, and hunger and everything than there ever been before. And so we need to wake up to what just happened, and just understand that our freedoms are being taken away. And, Jesus came to give us freedom, the individual. At the core of where it started was with Jesus, who I believe was the Son of God, to give us all the rights that have been taken away. And the hard thing is, once we have a right taken away, it's much easier to take away a right than it is to get it back. So that's what we're fighting against.
Yeah, and I just hope that when we finally do wake up, it's not too late.
I hope so. So anyway, it's the end of this segment, and stay tuned in. After the break, I'm going to be bringing my word for the week, and my word for the week is going to be Jesus, freedom, and the right to vote. And so after this next break, stay with us. I'm going to bring you a little word, some wisdom from Ski. God bless you. I'll see you after this break.
Hey everybody, this is Motorcycle Mike, the personal injury lawyer. In addition to representing injured motorcyclists for over 30 years now, during that same time, I've represented countless car crash victims and construction workers injured on construction sites. If you need my assistance, go to my website, motorcyclemikeesq.com. I will always be there for you.
This is Pastor Ski, and I want to tell you about two books that I've written, The Fear of Life and No Sting. The Fear of Life is my journey of faith and how I lived in fear for close to 35 years and how God took me out of it. No Sting is about my battle with cancer and my victory through God over it. And if you're interested in any of these books, go to barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, and also zulonpress.com. Go to the bookstore. And again, I want to thank you for your support. Welcome back to Answers from Mars Hill. This is Pastor Ski again. And we've been having a conversation today about freedom, voting, and Jesus. And as we look into this faith of Christianity, one of the main reasons that Jesus came, was sent to our humanity, was to break the bondage of oppression in this life. Yes, spiritual, to the influences of this dark world to bring us into despair, fear, anxiety, stress, and to calm our soul, free us of spiritual bondage. But also He came to give us freedom to decide what our life should be all about, what our dreams should be, what the vision for our life is, that we should have no one dictate the purpose and the movement of our life, but be free to roam about, free to believe what we want to believe, and the freedom to have a say in our life, which was a new concept. As Americans, we're very spoiled because we've enjoyed the luxury of freedoms. And I mentioned on the last segment, yes, with freedom there is responsibility, and this country has been far from perfect, but the ideals and the philosophies that we were founded on, though over the years, obviously, there have been some who have taken advantage of other people and been opportunists, but as far as a country that has kind of tried to monitor and rein in its society for the goodness of humanity and the goodness of life, and really principles that came strictly from the Bible. These weren't principles that the world was embracing up until Jesus came and kind of wrecked the system, so to speak. The original draining the swamp, if you will. And when Jesus came, there were so many people in oppression, and there were power brokers, religious power brokers. The sad part is this system of oppression had taken over even the arenas of faith, and even Judaism, which was God's first introduction into trying to help us rein in the goodness of what we could be. And so Jesus came and He said, "It's for freedom that I have come, freedom to set the captives free." Scripture that's on our literature and on everything for our church here, the Biker Church, is he who the Son sets free is free indeed. And we appreciate freedom, especially us who ride motorcycles. It's a philosophy. And again, that whole idea of freedom originated with the man who would be the Son of God. And as we look at the perfection of what humanity could be, and when we think of the ideals of these United States, and yes, we're far from perfect. Even in our beginning, there was slavery, and there were things that were part of our system. But when you look at the documents and the careful drafting by the founders of just how we would be able to be a free society, that we would have freedom to live our life as we please, freedom to not be oppressed and have things forced on us, and freedom to actually care freedom to be compassionate, freedom to love others, which is what the Bible is really built on. And as I've been saying today, Jesus had a lot to say about freedom, and he had a lot to say about life. Our Constitution, as I mentioned earlier, gives us the unalienable rights that our Creator has given us. And among all those rights, because it isn't just these rights, are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And life is a right. Life is a right. Freedom to choose what we want to do in life, where we want to go, who we want to be, follow our dreams, follow our call, however you view it. These are all principles that Jesus introduced to the world when he said, "Who the Son sets free is free indeed." And Paul tells us in Galatians that freedom, we can't abuse our freedom either. In Galatians chapter 5, the Apostle Paul, speaking to a church that had gotten caught up in the legalistic way of doing things and oppressing people again and feeling oppressed, he said, it's for freedom you were called. Only do not turn your freedom into an opportunity for your flesh, but through love serve one another. Freedom to serve is a powerful freedom. For the whole law that God had handed down, the whole law of really a good humanity, is fulfilled in one word and in the statement that you should love your neighbor as yourself. And we're talking about a freedom to love other people and a freedom to accept love. And when we look at the things we've talked about politically, we don't have the freedom to care about other people as we should. Part of that's internal, that there's some prejudices, there's been walls and barriers and socioeconomic divides that have kept us from caring and loving for each other. And that has created a political system that's corrupt. And so we tend to only love those in the same status as we are, because we are either in the oppressed group or we're in the privileged group. And so, as we look at this particular premise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I believe the only way we can achieve this thing in its ideal is through grabbing onto the principles, the life and the teachings of Jesus. Because everything he talked about was setting the captives free, not being under the bondage of oppression to others, and having to live according to the ways that others have decided, and have other people make our decision for us. Now, you may think that's confusing, because sometimes the perception is that religion tells us what our decision should be. Unlike Christianity, you're probably right with most other religions or faith. But within what is true Christianity is the freedom to have a relationship with God individually, and then play that out in your own life, your own calling, your own purpose. Independent, but also part of what is the total of humanity. And so as we take a deep look at our culture and our society, and what's happening in our country actually is nothing new. The two divides that this country has gone through in the last several years is the same two divides that historically great empires, great nations, and great peoples have struggled with. And it's what people that try to promote freedom when it suits their purpose. And that should never be, whether you're leaning right, whether you're leaning left, whether you're in the center. Freedom should be for all. You know, as believers in Jesus and people who share the gospel of Jesus Christ with the world, we totally understand that people are free to make their own choices. And when people aren't in the faith of Christianity and don't really desire to investigate or even go there, our Savior said, we love them. We love them. We still care about them. We still serve them. And that's a freedom that's internal that Jesus gave us, the freedom to love and care for people we totally disagree with. And maybe you're out there and you just don't believe in this faith in Jesus, and you've seen some pretty evil attitudes from people who call themselves Christian. Understand that's not the way of Jesus. And anyone can call themselves whatever they want. But Jesus said to love your enemies. And pray for those who may even despitefully use you. And that's a freedom we have where we're not caught up in animosity. We're not caught up in hate. It's a freedom that really trumps all the other freedoms that we could possibly have in this life. It's a freedom to not deal with the rage that, over the last several years, if we've seen nothing, it's been rage. I believe more so from one side, but even from the other side who professes not to be about rage, we've seen rage. And it's a state of the human heart. And the human heart has to be set free from its own prejudices, its own disappointments. That's the freedom that Jesus came. That's the core of all our other freedoms. And so as we just think about our country, think about humanity, think about our neighbors, our brothers, Republicans, Democrats, left, right, conservative, liberal, we all have the freedom to either love or hate each other. And nothing good ever comes of hate. We need to learn to be free to love. I believe it's hard when you don't follow the way of Jesus. If you don't have this change that overcomes it, because what's going to make you do this supernatural thing? But it's a freedom you can't explain. And so that's the word for the week. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I pray for our nation. Pray for our nation. I pray for all of you that you can understand the freedom that Jesus came to give us. Not get caught up in the religion, not to get caught up in the methodologies and the traditions, but get caught up in the man who brought us true freedom, true life, and the one who really gave us the right to have a vote. Anyway, this is the word for the week. This is Pastor Ski of the Russian Wind Biker Church. If anyone out there is compelled to contribute to the show, you can text GIVE to 631-253-7773. You go to the Russian Wind Biker Church website, click donate. They have a category for Answers to Mars Hill. And if you're ever in Holbrook, come visit the Biker Church at 10 Peachtree Court in Holbrook, New York. And through this chaos, through this great divide, let us learn freedom to live with each other, love with each other. This is what Paul was talking about when he went to explain the unknown God on Mars Hill of that day in the Bible. God bless you all. I'll see you next week. This is Pastor Ski.